What's up, everyone, and welcome to ClearTalk. In this video, we're going to be talking about the peak Hegseth debacle that is going on in media, social media, in news media, and everything over the article that came out, I think, from the Washington Post. I might be wrong on that, but I think the Washington Post stating how in the very first attack that was done in the Caribbean on September the 2nd, that Peak Hegseth gave the order to kill them all. And it, after the first strike, left survivors. Because of that order, the general in charge of said operation then delivered a second strike to kill the survivors, which is being now disputed very much so in Washington and in the news and amongst basically everybody as to whether or not that's war crimes, which clearly it is. So we're going to talk about this as well as talk about history of Peak Hegseth. And something that I found in the Guardian, from the Guardian yesterday, and we're gonna kind of piece this all together here. So thank you very much for joining me here on ClearTalk. If you are new here, welcome to ClearTalk. If you'd like to check out more videos from the channel, please do so. Consider subscribing, like, share, comment, all that good stuff to help get more videos to more people. If you would like to check out videos from my other channels, JMDPLAY, puzzling there. If you see what you like, or like what you see rather, consider subscribing over there as well. You have Patreon there if you want to support any kind of way. $3 a month can help support any of the channels you choose. To help grow them, or help grow Patreon, or help just grow the JMD Nation, or contribute in any kind of way that you want to the JMD Nation. Any support you give is very much appreciated. I thank you very much. And if you're returning, you're freaking amazing. Thank you. Welcome back, and keep coming back because we love you here. All right, so what we had happen was, like I said, the Washington Post bring out an article stating that the operation, the very first strike in the Caribbean on a boat that was on September 2nd, that the claim is that evidence was brought that this boat was carrying drugs of some sort, and so Pete Hegseth, in the war on drugs and the war on Venezuela, apparently just in general, we were going to take out that boat. But his orders, according to officials and that were in on the situation, claimed that he gave the orders to kill them all. Now, Pete Hegseth himself has denied this, saying that was not what he gave, that he gave orders to destroy the boat, or whatever, or the operation was to destroy this boat, or eliminate the threat, and then after the first strike, he exited from. He was there. He said that he was there, present for the first strike, and then he exited because he had more important things to worry about and other things, because he's such a busy fucking man, and that then basically threw the bus on the commander there that was in charge of the operation, that he then took the initiative to do the second strike after they found, like an hour later roughly. He couldn't state the amount of time because apparently the head of Pentagon doesn't know operational times and things like that, I guess. I mean, that seems legit. He didn't know how long after, but some period of time after, a second strike was given to completely eliminate the survivors, of the strike, which is inevitably a war crime. I mean, just the initial strike itself is technically a war crime. This is a type of operation, and we've talked about this from the get-go. And that's the reason why you've had other people that kind of stepped away from it. You've had the UK step away. We talked about this, how they stopped giving, intelligence and stuff to the U.S. about the area because they felt that the strikes were extrajudiciary and that they were potentially international war crimes. And so, I mean, this is something that, and now after like 21, 22 boats have been struck, over 80 people killed, many of which have come out later to just be fishermen from not only just Venezuela, but from Cuba and Trinidad and a couple other areas. Just fishermen that have been killed, innocent people killed, and there has been no evidence given whatsoever that any of these boats actually had drugs in them. Okay? We've stated this over and over again. There's been no evidence presented. And people say, oh, yes, there is. They've shown the evidence. They show the boats and there was containers on the boats. You do not know what the fuck those containers had. They could have been moving anything. And even so, none of those boats presented any type of direct, immediate risk to the United States. None of them were even going towards the United States. They were headed to other areas, and they would have had to have been fueled many times along different paths in order to get to any kind of destination that would then threaten the United States. Not to mention the fact that fentanyl doesn't even come from Venezuela. And that was what this argument for fighting drugs and fighting here to prevent the drug issue in America from continuing over fentanyl. Fentanyl doesn't even come from Venezuela. And even of all the drugs that do come into the United States, our intelligence has shown that like around 10% or less than 10% of all drugs that come to the United States come from Venezuela. But yet we have made this huge fight against Venezuela and threatening to even make land attacks on Venezuela. This is all coming from the president himself. But, so, we had this come out and said that the orders were taken out and that there have been military lawmakers and lawyers and stuff, JAG officers and stuff, that have stated, many of them stated that these were very much potentially war crimes. And that's the reason why now you have a lot of people that were engaged in all of this now seeking outside, like professional, legal, representation and stuff, because they're starting to get concerned that, oh shit, these may have been war crimes that I was forced to carry out by orders up the chain. You have the president himself in the gaggle the other day, and he acts like he didn't know anything about it, or that he didn't know. He was told by Hegseth that it was good. That wasn't what he said. That he didn't say that, so he's good with it. He believes them because Hegseth's the perfection of truth. Here is him on the gaggle.
Can you talk a little bit about the strikes and the controversy around Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth?
I don't know anything about it. He said he did not say that, and I believe it.
So you don't know if there was
the two men?
the second strike to kill the two men?
No, he said he didn't do it. He said he never said it.
Would you be okay with that if he did?
He said he didn't do it, so I don't have to make that decision.
Mr. You've made so clear how you want to keep drugs out of the U.S.
Right.
Can you explain more about why you've been pardoned a notorious drug trafficker
he made sure to put that in there. That includes this country too. Like, you can't put me in jail because, stuff goes on here. I didn't do nothing. So what he's claiming there, of course, initially stating that he did not know, or that he, it's basically taking Pete Hegseth's word for it, and that, even when brought with the, possibility, well, I mean, if you do find that it actually did happen, would you agree that, would you be okay with that? Which now, since this, the United States intelligence has released that, oh yes, this did happen. A second strike was done, and these people were killed, and this is potentially an issue. And yet he's still, even in the press conference, committee cabinet meeting yesterday, just like threw it up to, yeah, it's not a big deal. And then he goes on, this lady over here asks about, well, with your whole war on drug terrorists, and the drug trafficking and everything you've been doing in the Caribbean, why did you then pardon a well-known drug trafficker from Honduras? 7 days into his sentence, Trump pardoned him, or commutation of him. 7 days into his sentence of a 2-year sentence, I think. And he pardons him. A drug trafficker, who was a previous president of Honduras, that was brought up and known to have connections and stuff to traffic drugs into the United States. He was put on trial, evidence was brought upon him, and we charged him. And it was done under the Biden administration. And just because it was done under the Biden administration, like he's been going on this rant about for a while now, everything Biden did was all fake. It was all lies. He didn't know what he was doing. He was asleep. And of course, then he goes back and is like, well, I mean, he didn't know what he was doing. It was the people around him. Like, he blames everything on Biden, but then he doesn't blame it on Biden. He blames it on the people around Biden. And it's because it's not really Biden's fault. He was asleep and shit. He didn't know what he was doing. His mental, he was in Looneyville. So, and anything that was done is null and void. And, we talked about this in the previous video. So this is what he's been doing. And he then pardons known traffickers, drug traffickers. He has no problem, doesn't question it, just pardons them. Because he's told that it was a Biden thing, a Biden era issue, and anything that happened under Biden had to have been fake. It had to have been BS. So, nothing legal here, nothing to see here. We're just letting it go. This is what he does. This is how he's been doing. And so he let this person be pardoned. Just like he's pardoned sexual predators and everything else. People that have committed crimes, genuinely committed crimes, and been prosecuted for crimes, and he's pardoning them. That's what he does. Because he wants to allow people to get away with crimes. As long as they're his kind of people. Presidents, the wealthy, CEOs. Yeah, his kind of people.
Somebody does something wrong, you put the president of the country in jail. They said it was a Biden setup. It was a Biden administration setup. And you have a big race going on this week, next week.
But he's also setting that up, may I mind you, for himself, so that later on, when things come out, he can be like, oh, well, I mean, I was just being told. It's the reason why he's constantly saying, I didn't really know about that. Ask this person, or ask that person in my administration. Ask that person in the cabinet. I don't know. They're handling that. they've told me, or or he'll say like they told me this, they told me that, and I believe them. About he's making it to where he has deniability on whether or not he is to blame for anything that happens. The plausible deniability. So that he can be like, well, this person told me, and this person told me, and they were doing this, and they were doing that, and I didn't really know, because I just took their word for it because I trusted them. That's the reason why he's making this argument even for Biden, to kind of let Biden off the hook a little bit. He blames him, but lets him off the hook a little bit because he knows that there's potential that he's going to need to be off the hook. It's the reason why even a minute ago he said, even in the United States, you can't let the president be blamed for stuff that happens,
I think it's going to be a very important race. It'll be interesting to see Honduras. That's what you're talking about, right?
Correct, yes.
Yes, ma'am. Well, what is the second part of your question? No, I don't have a deadline. I have a deadline when the war is over. And hopefully the war is going to be over. 27,000 people.
He's talking about Iraq war here. He goes on.
And Pete said he did not want them. He didn't even know what people were talking about. So we'll look into it. But no, I wouldn't have wanted not a second strike. The first strike was very lethal. It was fine. And if there were two people around, but Pete said that didn't happen.
Does that make you?
I have great confidence.
You saying there's no second strike?
I don't know. I'm going to find out about it. But Pete said he did not order the death of those two men.
Do you have any concerns about how those boat strikes have been carried out at all?
Very little, because you can see the boats, you can see the drugs in the boats, and each boat is responsible for killing 25,000 Americans. So, and they're doing an amazing job. And we're getting, you just look at the numbers, the amount of drugs coming into our country by sea is infinitesimal compared to what it was just a few months ago.
What the fuck word was that? I don't even know what the word that was. But he makes this claim. And I wanted to include this in. I know this is about Pete Hegseth, but I wanted to include this part in. He makes this claim that that these boats, and he goes on to second this claim later on. He's trying to make it clear to these reporters, you understand that each one of these boats is responsible for 25,000 on average deaths in America. 25,000 deaths in America. These drug boats. Okay? And I thought for a second, 25,000? Wait a minute. How is that possible? Wait a minute. Let me do the math. So I did the math. 22 boats. Just 21 boats. 21 boats is 525,000. 525,000 people. So he's claiming that these boats that they have destroyed, the 21 boats that they have destroyed, has saved 525,000 people on average. Okay, that is annual average. And I thought, but how many people in the United States die from drug overdose on average? Interesting, right? What is that number? According to the National Center for Drug Abuse, that number is around 100,000. And this was in 2023. That was the all-time high. Well, 2024, I think, was the all-time high. And it was a little bit over 100,000, like a little bit over 105. Reports are of 2024 that it had fallen down to 80,000. And that the consensus there is that we are like, there is better policies and works around like understanding where the drugs are coming from, how they're being distributed, and then also just the awareness of people in America, the broader and growing awareness of this being an issue and that this is killing people, and there are less youth and people that typically do drugs or the lowering of drug use in America just in general over the past year has dropped. And the concern and understanding that this is in our drugs potentially has pushed away people, potential people of overdosing to overdose. So this is dropping. It dropped last year. But even so, the average of 2023 was 100, or the numbers for it was 105,000. I think again in 2022, it was also kind of high, about 110 or 115, something like that. And then 2021 was somewhere around 100,000. So the past 3 or 4 years, it has been floating around the 100,000 mark. That in itself is well below 525,000. And if you say, well, he meant, he meant fentanyl related deaths, not necessarily overdoses, just fentanyl related deaths. Okay. Fentanyl related deaths last year, or the year before that, actually, 2023, was around 80,000. Well, actually, I don't even think it was, I think it was around 70,000. So even that number, if you're stating that these numbers do not include fentanyl, which they do, but if you were to say that they don't, as a matter of fact, these numbers doesn't all contribute from fentanyl. It's cocaine, heroin, just opioids in general have the number one, not necessarily fentanyl itself. So his numbers, again, he inflates and lies about numbers and says them just because he thinks and knows that his followers are just going to believe it. So even if he legitimately thinks that each boat represents 25,000 people saved, or represents 25,000 people that died annually, then there was no need for killing or taking out 21 boats. You could have done that with just 4 or 5, and you wouldn't have had to worry about people dying. That would have taken it all out. If he said that each one of those boats represents that, well, then the average death of the past 4 or 5 years, most of which spiked that high due to COVID, because of the stress. You can, there's lots of things you could argue there. The stress of people losing loved ones and coping with it and everything else, turning themselves over to drug use to cope with it or whatever. I mean, there's reasons why there was such a high spike in 2020 of overdoses that had nothing to do, even though that was even the year of his first administration. But it had also nothing to do with Biden and his administration. So he denies and or doesn't believe Pete Hegseth had anything to do or knew about it. And even if he did, he wouldn't have ordered it, but it's done now. He's not concerned about it because it saved people and whatever. But Pete Hegseth, what are we talking about here? What type of person is Pete Hegseth? What is some of his history? So real quick, I'm going to hit here on The Guardian. I have this article. Pete Hegseth told U.S. soldiers in Iraq to ignore legal advice on rules of engagement. Pete Hegseth, the U.S. Defense Secretary, told soldiers under his command in Iraq to ignore legal advice about when they were permitted to kill enemy combatants under their rule of engagement. The anecdote is contained in a book Hegseth wrote last year, in which he also reportedly railed against the constraints placed on American warfighters by the laws of war and Geneva Conventions. Hegseth is currently under scrutiny for a 2 September attack on a boat purportedly carrying drugs in the Caribbean, where survivors of a first strike on the vessel were reportedly killed in a second strike following a verbal order from the Hegseth to kill everybody. Hegseth has denied giving the order and retained the support of Donald Trump. The U.S. president said Hegseth told him he did not say that, and I believe him 100%. But some U.S. senators have raised the possibility that the U.S. War Secretary committed a war crime. In the book, The War on Warriors, Hegseth relates a story about a legal briefing at the beginning of his service in Iraq, in which he told the men under his command to ignore guidance from a military judge advocate general's JAG attorney's guidance that the rules of engagement about the rules of engagement in a conflict. Hegseth writes that upon arriving in Iraq, the men were briefed regarding the latest in theater, quote, rules of engagement, adding, needless to say, no infantrymen like Army lawyers, which is why JAG officers are often not so affectionately known as JAG-offs. Sorry, I had a little trouble there. He added of JAG lawyers, most spend more time prosecuting our troops than they do putting away bad guys. It's easy to get promoted that way. Hegseth writes that in explaining the rules of engagement, the JAG officer used the example of an identified enemy holding a rocket-propelled grenade, asking Hegseth's platoon, "Do you shoot at him?" And he quotes, "And my guys were like, hell yeah, we light him up." Hegseth writes. According to Hegseth, the JAG officer responded, "Wrong answer, men. You are not authorized to fire at that man until that RPG becomes a threat. It must be pointed at you with the intent to fire. That makes it a legal and proper engagement." To me, that makes sense. You don't just willy-nilly blow up somebody that just carrying around an RPG, and that's kind of an extreme, but it's the same like with ever just carrying a gun. An RPG is just a type of weapon. You don't just willy-nilly blow them up because you see them carrying it around. Rules of engagement, unless there is a direct threat, then you have the right to take them out. Hegseth writes in his response, "We sat in silence, stunned. He then instructed his men to ignore the legal advice. After this briefing, I pulled my platoon together, huddling amid their confusion to tell them, I will not allow that nonsense to filter into your brains. Men, if you see an enemy who you believe is a threat, you engage and destroy that threat. That's a bullshit rule that's going to get people killed, and I will have your back just like our commander. We are going home. The enemy will not." And that's the mentality of the man that's over the Pentagon right now. He doesn't care. That's the reason why he constantly has this rhetoric of, we want to be the most lethal, we will destroy, we don't, with no concern. Just kill them all. The Guardian contacted the Department of Defense for comment. Professor David M. Crane, a former chief prosecutor of the UN Special Court for Sierra Leone, distinguished scholar in residence at Syracuse University College of Law, and an Army veteran with 20 years service, including stints as a JAG attorney, said Obeying rules of engagement was crucial and that those who break them should face sanction. After the tragedy of My Lai in 1968, we have tried to avoid another one and prosecute those that do in fact stray. And that happened particularly in Iraq at Fallujah and other places in defense where we had some Marines go south and commit war crimes and they're prosecuted for it. He said these rules go all the way up the chain of command. I mean, it goes all the way to the President of the United States, who is the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the United States. So if there is an illegal order that goes all the way down, then all of them have committed a war crime. It's not just a simple guy in an airplane, the jet aircraft, firing those missiles at the boat. Yes, they are following an illegal order, but it goes all the way to the president. In his book, however, Hegseth called into question the entire edifice of laws of conflict, writing, "If our warriors are forced to follow rules arbitrarily and asked to sacrifice more lives so that international tribunals feel better about themselves, aren't we just better off winning our wars according to our own rules? Who cares what other countries think?" This is the mind of a war criminal. This is the mind of someone who does not care about the rule of law. Although the Republican Party is all about the fucking rule of law, right? This man does not care about rule of law. He cares about his own rules and how he perceives those rules should be. He doesn't care about whether or not we are working judicially, working within rules of engagement, respectful engagement that would actually probably help prevent engagement. He wants to just engage. In Trump's first term, Hegseth successfully campaigned for the pardon of 2 Army officers and the reversal of disciplinary measures on a Navy SEAL, each of whom were either charged with or convicted of war crimes. He has expressed admiration for his former commanding officer, the now retired Army colonel and, according to Hegseth, certified badass Michael Steele, who was reprimanded after reportedly ordering soldiers in 2006 in Iraq to kill all military-age males in a raid. Crane said of Hegseth's portrayal of fundamental antagonism between JAG officers and soldiers that it was absolutely not true, and that the bottom line is that judge advocates are soldiers who are lawyers and whose job is to make sure soldiers don't commit violations of the law of armed conflict, and the soldiers appreciate it. That's their point. That's the point. It keeps them out of any legal issues. It keeps them from having to worry about, okay, because I killed this person, did I do that lawfully so that I don't get in trouble for it? Because murder is still murder. Even if the Army does it, there has to be a reason. There has to be a rule-defined reason why you committed that crime. Or you committed that act, and whether or not it would be considered a crime. I want to clarify. He added, I have deployed around the world this is Crane, I have deployed around the world in some very scary places with my unit as their lawyer, but I did everything that my unit did, jumping on airplanes, scaling cliffs, doing all the things that you know about these very specialized organizations. I did it too. I was right there with them. They respected me, I respected them, and they listened to me. And further going on the certified badass that Hegseth states of his former commander, in the same passage of the book in his as his antidote, Hegseth praises his then commander, who was later reprimanded for his own role in an incident in which unarmed Iraqis were killed by U.S. soldiers. He commends Colonel Michael Steele, our brigade commander, as a certified badass, adding that Steele incentivized the killing of Iraqis. He suffered no fools. If you engage the enemy and destroy it under his command, you got a kill coin. Hegseth adds, Colonel Steele would have been a horrible gender studies professor at the University of California, but there was nobody you wanted more in a combat situation. Steele was commander of the 3rd Brigade, 187th Infantry Regiment in the 101st Airborne Division between 2004 and 2006, under whom Hegseth served as a platoon commander. In 2006, 4 soldiers under his command were charged with the murder of unarmed Iraqis during a raid in Salahuddin, I might have that wrong, but province, and in sworn statements, the men said Steele had ordered them to kill all military-aged males. Media reports at the time indicated that Steele had promoted body counts as a measure of performance, with the New York Times reporting of Steele that in Iraq, as a commander involved in harrowing assaults against insurgents, he inspired the use of kill boards to track how many Iraqis each soldier had killed over time. This was a game for this man. Killing Iraqis was a game. It wasn't about did they deserve it or not, whether they were innocent or actual combatants. He didn't care. Raid, kill them all. And the more you kill, I give you kill coins. You get special treatment. In 2007, or rewarded in some kind of way. In 2007, the New York Times reported that Steele had been formally reprimanded for issuing improper orders for the raid, effectively blocking his further promotions, and had been rotated out of Iraq to an administrative assignment. Crane said, we have commanders who are badasses, and most of them don't go into higher rank because they're quiet. They are quietly removed from service, or they're court-martialed, or removed, or reprimanded, or put in jail. He said Colonel Steele was completely outside the bounds. That mentality is frowned upon, and that's why he was reprimanded and his career was ended. This shows you the mindset of this Secretary of Defense. That's the kind of person, that's the signal they're sending the commanders. Kill them all and let God sort them out. And that's what Pete Hegseth said. That should be of concern, that we have somebody that's over the Pentagon who was under the command of someone like Colonel Steele. And it would be one thing if Hegseth was like complete opposite of that, like he had learned that was wrong, and in practice his orders were completely different. But clearly that's not the case. He defends Steele, and he thinks Steele was a certified badass and a deserving and respectful commander for what he did. He praises him for committing war crimes. So it's not hard to realize and think Hegseth himself would not have a problem with committing war crimes. In the book, Hegseth ventilates more general grievances about legal restraints put on soldiers in combat. At one point, he writes, "We sent men to fight on our behalf and then second-guess the manner in which they fight. I saw it every day. In some cases, our units were so boxed in by rules and regulations and political correctness We even second guessed ourselves. That needs to end. Count me out on the Monday morning quarterbacking. I am with the American warfighters all the way. So we don't need to question ourselves and whether or not we are committing crimes. We just need to follow orders. We just need to do it. We just need, if we're told to kill, then we need to kill, because that's what we are. We are killing machines. Haru. Elsewhere, Hegseth appears to argue that American soldiers should proceed without any constraints whatsoever. He writes, if we're going to send our boys to fight, and it should be boys, Fuck me, bro. Yeah, we should most certainly send the youngest that we have. We should be sending out all our youngest, our little boys, our young, should be boys. Unless he's stating, or maybe this is boys and not girls. Like, we need men and not women. That might be a misogynistic thing there. I don't know where he's really going with that. It could be either or. We need to unleash them to win. They need them to be the most ruthless, the most uncompromising, the most overwhelmingly lethal as they can be. We must break the enemy's will. Hegseth adds an apparent call for virtual impunity for serving soldiers, writing, our troops will make mistakes, and when they do, they should get the overwhelmingly benefit of the doubt. The idea that soldiers should be given the benefit of the doubt echoes comments Hegseth made in November 2019 after Trump pardoned Clint Lawrence, then serving a 19-year sentence for the murder of two civilians, Maj Matthew Goldstein, who was facing murder charges over the killing of an unarmed Afghan civilian, and reversed the demotion of Navy SEAL Edward Gallagher, who in July 2019 was found not guilty of murder over the death of an IS captive, but was convicted for posing for photos with the man's corpse. At that time, Hegseth, still a news presenter, but widely credited for influencing Trump to clear the man, told the Fox News audience that Trump had shown fidelity to the warfighter. The president looks at it through that lens, a simple one, the important one. The benefit of the doubt should go to the guys pulling the trigger. I don't think taking photos with a dead corpse has anything to do with pulling a trigger. But Crane said that such pardons cheapen the profession. Having been in the military myself, there's a great amount of pride among the professionals within the U.S. Armed Forces, and they take great pride in following the law and doing things appropriately under law. The force is irritated now and embarrassed because they truly believe in separating themselves from the politics, and they are America's armed forces, not the president's armed forces. So that's what you have here. You have a man in control of the Pentagon and of our armed forces, giving orders to our armed forces to carry out operations and missions of our armed forces, who once was led by a commander who was ruthless and committed and ordered war crimes, was reprimanded for those war crimes. And this man defends those war crimes. And now he is himself commanding war crimes. So while, yeah, I don't have proof that he said to kill them all, But is it possible? Is it probable? It's quite probable that he did. And now, 22 boats later, and more evidence, more evidence coming out that these were not even drug traffickers, that there were no drugs on these boats, and that these were just fishermen from all kinds of different countries. There's more evidence coming out of that type of information than any evidence provided by the administration to prove that these boats had drugs on them. Matter of fact, there's been no evidence. And a picture is not evidence. A picture of a boat with containers is not evidence. All kinds of boats go through the water with all kinds of containers, with all kinds of items in those containers. Not evidence. Again, the process would have been to stop the boat, take control of the boat, search the boat, look for evidence, provide that evidence, pictures, everything of drugs and everything, then bring that evidence into custody along with those individuals, trial those individuals for that evidence, and then imprison them or send them back to their country for imprisonment or whatever the case. That would have been the proper process. We are not in an engaged war with Venezuela. We are not engaged in war, like an approval of war with boats in the Caribbean. These are unlawful orders being made, extrajudiciary orders unilaterally being made by the president and those representing the president, like Pete Hegseth, to commit these acts, these actions, these attacks, missile attacks on boats with potentially innocent people. Without the approval of Congress or the approval of the American people. That's who's running our country. That's who's running our military. That's who's making the decisions on actions that our military is taking. So we should bring into question any and everything that this administration, that Pete Hegseth, that Donald Trump says. Because by their own admissions, they defend and are okay with war crimes. But let me know what you think. Until next time, peace, clear talk. I'm out.